Gentlemen, welcome to Climate Talk Uganda.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Please introduce yourselves. I know I have your names, but I might get one name very, very wrong.
My name is William Tom from Foundations for Farming, based in Zimbabwe.
Great.
Thank you so much. My name is Makawe Mtembu. You're welcome to call me Mac, which are the first three letters of Mac. I am from South Africa.
I will stick to Mac. I am very certain I would butcher it if I tried anything else.
Not a problem at all.
Great. So how do the two of you come to be under Foundations for Farming? I'm very curious. Were you interested in agriculture from when you were kids? How do you get into all of this? William, I'll start with you.
In fact, I think for me, I grew up in a village. When you're a village boy, you grow up eating agriculture, growing agriculture, whatever you do is agriculture based. And I remember when I was young at school, I said I would try to run away from agriculture as far as possible. But after a series of events, I ended up being given one of Foundation Farming Trainers Manual to translate into the local language. Understanding the principles and the heart behind the Foundations for Farming principles, that's what draws me back to agriculture. And in about a year's time, I was approached to join the team, and I joined the team, and now it has been almost 18 years since I joined Foundations for Farming. But for me, what changed my heart was how this has an opportunity to uplift small-scale farmers. As a guy who grew up in a village, you work so hard, but at the end of the day, you have this very little. Yeah. And I said, what's the point of doing agriculture? But going through the foundation farming course and you see the heart and the vision and the hope that it brings to farmers, I said, this is what I want to do. The rest is history today.
So you were translating into what language?
Into the local language, which is Shona.
Shona,
yeah.
Okay. If you were to say Foundations for Farming in Shona, what would you say?
Neo Yekurima.
Kurima means dig, right?
Farm.
Farm.
Yeah.
It means dig for us.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so Pfumvudza is a Shona word.
Pfumvudza is a Shona word. So Pfumvudza is derived from the word new season. So Pfumvudza in our context, in a Zimbabwean context, is, there's a time where the trees sheds all their leaves, yeah. But before the new leaf starts, there's new bud that comes on a tree. And we call that time Pfumvudza because the trees are preparing for the rains. So now Pfumvudza means preparing for a new season in agriculture, new season in your life, that, trees are preparing before the rains, the trees prepare. But what we see with farmers is before the rains, farmers are not prepared. Yeah. So Pfumvudza is trying to teach farmers that before the rains come, you need to be prepared, just as the trees prepare. Like even the Bible as well talks about, when you see that the trees are putting new buds, know that summer is near. And the same as well with us, that we need to prepare for the new season. And Pfumvudza is that way, how we can change agriculture in a way that brings profitability as well.
So there are always signs, and when you see the signs, prepare.
Yeah.
Am I saying Pfumvudza right every time you say it?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
Mac,
Yeah,
how do you come into Foundations for Farming?
So I studied agriculture at university. I graduated in 2011. I had these huge ambitions to work in agriculture and make lots of money and so forth, but only to find out the reality on the ground is that it's actually agriculture is actually a greater calling. So I mean, for many years after I graduated, I found myself working different jobs because that's the interesting thing. People who studied agriculture don't easily get jobs. And especially in South Africa, so many young people study agriculture and end up not working, which I found to be very strange because there's so much land that is not being utilized at all. I think if you actually look at the history of South Africa, there's a whole lot of debate and a whole lot of politics surrounding land ownership itself. So eventually, in my journey, one time I sold cars, as a job. And one day I was standing at the floor of a dealership selling cars, and I met a gentleman which I believe was a God moment for me, because I felt the need to say to a stranger, I'm here, but I don't really want to be here. I actually want to do farming. And then he introduced me to my mentor, which is a man by the name of Neil Jackson, under Foundations for Farming. And then my journey with Foundations for Farming started in 2018. From there, I've been doing only Foundations for Farming.
So one of you was running to agriculture, another one was running away from it, and you just both found yourselves in there. So tell me about, and I don't know which of you is going to tell me, my questions are just going to be out there. Tell me about Foundations for Farming.
Okay, so Foundation Farming was started by a man called Brice in the early 80s, 1982 to be exact. So Brice was a very good commercial farmer and was growing tobacco. And after growing tobacco successfully and winning a lot of awards in agriculture, he just felt this calling that he was growing poison for like thousands of people, if not millions. One day his daughter asked him, Dad, if you say tobacco is bad, but why do you grow it? And I think that's where the conviction came. And as a Christian, as a believer, he couldn't sleep with that thought, with that question from his daughter. And one day he opened his Bible and he read the scripture, 1 Corinthians 10:31, which says, whatsoever you do, do it to the glory of God. And he realized that he's been growing poison for a lot of people. So he said, God, I'm going to stop tobacco, I'm going to grow food. And started growing food, but he had 3 terrible droughts in a row that he lost his farm. So he tried to follow God, but he lost his farm. And I remember in his story, he always said that, he prayed to God, why I've done everything to follow you, but why this is happening? And he went and just looked at nature and sat down one day under a tree and just said, God, teach me how to farm. And when you look at nature, there's no one with a plow plowing the forest for the trees to grow.
The birds of the air.
Yeah, you see the leaves drop from a tree. There's no one putting fertilizer because there's a lot of activity that's happening in natural forests to provide the nutrition that our plants need in the forest. So he saw that there's no plowing and there's no burning. Those are the 2 keys that he saw in nature. And he said, no, I want to try this. So he started it. He had a farm of 1,000 hectares that he was managing. And he started just implementing on 2 hectares. And they were still plowing 998 hectares, but that year that farm made a profit. I know 2 hectares out of 1,000 hectares is like a drop in an ocean, but God saw that faithfulness in just starting small. That's why Pfumvudza is also key as well, that whatever you want to do, start small. So yeah, I started with 2 hectares, then the next day did 50 hectares, then after about 5 years, 6 years, he did the whole farm, 1,000 hectares, without no plowing. In those days, there were not many no-till machinery to plant in a situation where you don't have to plow your land. So he had to modify his planters to plant in a condition where you don't have to plow your soil. But during that time, Brice won so many prizes, Maize Grower of the Year 3 times in a row, until he was asked not to enter again because he always win it. But that's how he grew. But during that time, God just gave him this heart and desire that, Brian, I've given you this not for yourself, but for the small-scale farmer in Africa who are hit the most with the things that are happening in the world today in terms of hunger and poverty. Yeah. So from his farm, he started doing outreaches into his neighboring communities, teaching small-scale farmers, and that's how foundation farming started back in early 80s. Then he started noticing that, wherever they teach farmers, their yield will grow, but the moment that they withdraw, their yield collapse, and started thinking, why are their yields going down whenever we live? And he read that the depth of poverty in Africa is not just a technology need, but it's deep into our spiritual values as well. That needs to be addressed if we want to feed Africa and make Africa prosperous as well. So he started going around and monitoring and evaluating and working with the community instead of just doing a once-off training. He started working with the community, teaching them what to do at what stage as well. And that started to see a lot of result and change as well in those communities.
William, I know you've been in Uganda before. Mark, have you been in Uganda before?
This is my very first
It's
time.
your very first time?
Yes.
Okay. William, when you first came to Uganda, what did you think about our soils? What shocked you? What did you think?
My first time to Uganda, one thing that I remember so clearly was the amount of bananas and how green they are and everything. My first trip was to Ginger, and everything is green. And just to see that and to see how much Uganda has been blessed as far as this natural resources is concerned, some nations would just love to just save that as well. But again, you have good soil, you have good fertile soils, but I think the key is how do we sustain it for generations to come? Because if you are not careful, whatever we are doing, if you are not looking after the soil, one day we'll be like those countries we're actually saying, we wish we could get back to where we were like 100 years ago. So you have good soils. I can move to Uganda anytime because it's so fat. Everything, wherever you go, is green. You have good water source as well. And yeah, you have the best. And again, this is one of the best resources that God has given any nation, which is the land. But how do you make it productive? How can you make it feed the population as well? So it's by just being faithful with that first resource that you've been given and using it well.
Mark, I know you're going to the field today. When people were telling you, okay, you're going to Uganda for these trainings, what did they tell you about Uganda to help you prepare?
Well, I did hear about the fact that you guys have two different seasons in terms of rain, which is quite unique because you find that us in South Africa and even Zimbabwe itself, we only have one opportunity to be able to even do Pfumvudza, which is specifically maize. So I found that so interesting, and I really found I sort of envied you guys in the sense that you have two opportunities in a year to be able to produce something. So I'm really looking forward to see how the people are actually using what God has given them to the fullest, knowing that as William actually alluded to say, the main problem is a heart problem, to say, we can't get into agriculture because we want to make lots of money, but the fact that we don't realize the greater calling and the heart behind it, we end up not using, we don't steward the resources God has given us to the fullest. So I'm looking forward to see how the people are actually appreciating what God has given them.
I feel like you're already in the answer of my next question, so I will ask it. Explain Pfumvudza to me like I was a 9-year-old.
Interesting. A 9-year-old. So, first of all, with the word itself, what it means to me as a South African, it means a new beginning. Yes, we can focus on the season. For Pfumvudza itself, it also is a symbol of hope, to say, as much as things didn't go well in the past, but in terms of a symbol of hope that it's a new season to actually do things right. So it's for me, Pfumvudza is an opportunity to do things right. And then maybe now to go back to the context of a 9-year-old, I like to say to people, it's basically doing things that the way that the grandma used to do it, in a sense. So what does that mean? It means if you've gone to university and you've learned all the science behind agriculture, you sort of need to unlearn everything that you have learned at university and go back to the foundation of farming and the way that nature farms, which is the way that God farms. So simply learn from nature and the way that things happen in nature, and then try to mimic that, and then only bring in the science, and then you will see the results.
So I'm 9 years old. You're telling me to go and observe my grandmother, see what she's doing, and do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Why am I going to school in
Yeah, because what tends to happen is, we learn so much, and we like to focus so much on the wisdom of the world, and then we actually realize that the greatest wisdom is the wisdom from God himself. We tend to complicate things so much, you know. It's actually sad in South Africa, if I think about it, that so many young people study agriculture, but you'll find that most of them want to get a job in agriculture whilst they are actually standing on the land, which is everywhere. They do not use the land to produce for themselves. As much as we cry so much about unemployment, the fact that the unemployment rate, I think I checked the other day in South Africa, the youth unemployment rate is sitting at 58.5%, which is now generally, but in terms of agriculture itself, I do know that a lot of agriculture graduates do not get jobs. The question is, why don't you go and farm so that you can at least eat something for your family, and then if there's a surplus, we can then do business.
When you speak about the basics, Mark, and now I'll turn to you, William, what are those basics? What are the core principles of Pfumvudza, and why are they effective for a smallholder farmer?
Okay, so there are 4 key principles for Pfumvudza. Number 1 is minimum soil disturbance. Without a doubt, go anywhere in Africa, we have lost our fertile soils. Now we are left to plant our subsoil, which has very little plant life as well. So number 1 is how to steward that soil well in a way that brings and restore the value of that soil. Number 2 is mulching. Mulching, putting a blanket that covers the soil. The soil is not meant to be bare. I know in agriculture we're taught, whatever crop residue is left, we gather it around, we burn it, we slash and burn. That's the policy in Africa. But I promise you, God has put so much emphasis on that topsoil. And look at those things that we burn, which is our crop residues. Where do they come from? From the soil. So instead of putting it back to the soil and feeding the soil, we're actually burning it out. So our soils are getting poorer and poorer because we are losing organic matter at the end of the day. So mulching is very important in making sure that we restore our soil as well. I like whenever we take people around our plots at Foundation for Farming in Zimbabwe, you look at the soil where we are growing the crops. Each and every year the soil is growing because all that biomass is being left on the soil surface. The organisms eat that, decompose it, and now the soil is growing as you grow your crop. So instead of losing your soil, we are actually growing our soil by just putting a mulch cover. And some of the things that we have done to actually correct it, it doesn't need a lot of scientific terms to restore our soil. I'll just say, just put a mulch cover and God will do the rest. So mulching is very important. Then the third principle is crop rotation. Never plant a crop in the same place over and over again. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of pests and disease buildup. But also, certain crops take certain amount of food from the soil. So by doing rotation, you're actually helping you to build your soil instead of just taking what a maize plant need as well. Like if you rotate, I like to call a maize plant a heavy feeder. Mm-hmm. It just takes stuff off the ground. But if you rotate with beans or any peas or bean plant, they take nitrogen from the atmosphere, fix it into the soil, then the next crop will benefit. So crop rotation is so important if you want to farm sustainably. And we've realized that even with the plots that we do back home, we did an experiment over 6 years to see what crop rotation does in terms of nutritional benefit or building up your soil. We realized that you can actually harvest up to about 6 tons a hectare without putting any fertilizer by just incorporating rotation in your planning.
What I'm realizing is that you both speak hectares. We speak largely acres.
Okay. So a hectare is about 2.5 acres. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you can get let's say 2 tons per acre. Okay. Mm-hmm. By just doing rotation. A farmer harvesting 2 tons, putting fertilizer, he'll be happy. But imagine you're getting that without putting anything in terms of nutrition by just incorporating rotation in your farming. So rotation is important. Then the fourth and most important element is high management. Farming is a business. So if you want your business to prosper, do it well. Do it to the best of your ability. And high management requires you to do things on time. High management requires you to do things with to best standard possible without wasting your resources and doing it with joy. And I think if you take the last principle of joy is look at agriculture. I don't know about in Uganda, but I'm sure it's the same as well. That if you go to a school and you ask farmers, like students, how many of them wants to be farmers when they grow up? If you get 2, you are lucky, because somehow we take agriculture as something that, if you don't have any option, then you can go to agriculture. Yet agriculture is the backbone of any nation. Look at those nations that have done well. They were faithful with agriculture. And God started adding all those elements, but they were faithful with their land first. So those are the 4 key principles that need to be followed if we want to do things in a way that brings productivity and prosperity at the same time.
So you gave a lot of emphasis to mulching, crop rotation, and high management.
Yeah.
I want you to give the same emphasis to minimum soil disturbance.
Okay, so look how God has designed the soil. He put the topsoil on top, subsoil at the bottom, and God has put so many organisms in the soil that helps to build your soil. I'll take as an example, like in the top 15 centimeter layer, there are aerobic organisms that take the mulch, which is the plant material, eat it, break it down into smaller pieces, and whatever they eat, they excrete in the soil. That's plant available nutrients for the next crop. But we think that we are clever, so we come with a plow, we plow. Actually, when you are at agriculture college, what they teach you is the deeper you plow, the better farmer you are. So we plow as deep as possible. So what we are doing is we take the aerobic organism that needs oxygen to breathe, we put them down at the bottom where there's no oxygen, and they die. Then we take the anaerobic organisms, which are down below the soil profile, and we put them on top where they're exposed to sun and oxygen, and they die. In the same process, the God-made compost-making machine, we are actually killing it in one operation. And it costs us money. That's why if you look today, that in agriculture, for you to be successful, you need more fertilizer, you need more pesticide, you need more and more and more and more. Because we've actually destroyed the soil life that is in the soil that is supposed to actually produce the nutrient that the plants need organically. But now we said, okay, now our soils are dead. So now for us to grow a crop, we now rely more on fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers. Yet if you look at nature, go to any natural forest, no one has broadcast. You have never heard the government saying, okay, let's get Rwanda Air to go and broadcast fertilizer on those trees, but they are dying of lack of nutrients. They've been growing for years and years without any man's help because of those organisms building up our soil each and every time.
Undisturbed.
And that's what we need to get back to that stage as well.
Why is this, and Mark, this is for you, but please feel free to come in even when the questions are to William. Why are these basic principles important for smallholder farming?
Well, they're very important in the sense that we tend to want more in terms of resources, whereas we don't realize the importance of just being a greater steward with the little that God has already given us. If I look at the African context, or specifically in South Africa, we find that people are always relying specifically on the government to give them. I don't know if with you guys, if it's a prevalent thing with grants and, the funding. People are always looking for funding. They're always looking for grants, not realizing that the way that God has designed it is in order to be given more, you need to be faithful with what He's already given you.
We have a saying in Uganda, and William, you should come and translate it. To our government, tuyambe, which...
We are asking government for help.
Yeah, we're constantly asking the government for help for everything. So it's the same situation.
Yes. So it's all about a question of faithfulness. God promises us that if we're faithful with the little that He's given us, then He will add more. So that is the attitude that we need to adopt. And together with the important conservation agriculture principles, specifically on the high management, we need to realize the importance of actually following these 4 management principles that have to do with the doing part, which are the implementation management principles, which are doing things on time, at a high standard, without wastage so that you can get joy. And also the joy is not just a result, but it's part of the process. So maybe to break it down, when we do things on time, when it comes to agriculture specifically, we follow the seasons that have to do with the particular crop that you're growing. But you find that people don't realize that, you know, when you try and grow a crop at a season that is not suitable to be grown, then you will not get the results that you expect, because you're also making it difficult for that crop to grow. And then when it comes to doing things at a high standard, we need to measure to know. You know, we cannot be able to even predict results without doing everything according to measurement. So what we also teach with the Pfumvudza specifically is that everything has a measurement. You know, the inter-row, between row spacing and then in the row spacing and so forth. We need to follow that because it determines the ultimate result at the end of the day. Because we find, I mean, even in the rural areas in South Africa, people used to plant maize by just broadcasting the seed, you know, without measuring where they're actually planting it. What are we doing there? We're making it difficult for that crop to grow, you know, because if crops are too close to each other or too far from each other, that also affects the result that you eventually get. And also to do with feeding the soil, you know, if we don't measure how much fertilizer or I specifically don't even want to speak about fertilizer because we're trying to encourage people to not rely on fertilizer. If we do not measure the amount of nutrition that we give our crops, we also cannot, you know, predict the best possible result.
Or even the amount of seed.
Even the amount of seed. Yeah. We do everything at a high standard. And then the third one would be without wastage. We heard the very important part here, which says we need to make sure that we use mulch, which is we also call God's blanket, which is the natural cover on the soil. We waste that a lot. What do we tend to do? We cut the grass and we take all that grass and we burn it with the matches, or we take it and we feed it to the animals. What does that eventually do? We have to find ourselves going to buy fertilizer to put back into the soil. So we are constantly in this cycle of spending instead of building the soil to be self-sustainable, you know. And also from a wastage point of view, you know, specifically we heard about no tillage, which is not turning the soil. It's interesting. I think off air, before we recorded the interview, you mentioned the word for farming. What did you call it? Ukulima. Kulima. It's the same in South Africa. We call it ukulima. So it's interesting. I found that word, we use it in different ways. It means agriculture, but it also means to turn over the soil. So think about it. It actually means we think to farm, you need to turn over the soil. That is the mindset that we have. But that is not how it happens in creation. In nature, the soil does not need to be turned over in order to grow something. So if we can actually learn from nature, we'll get greater results. And then, you know, in terms of doing things without wastage, there's also an element of saying, you know, the most important thing that we need to focus on is the soil itself. I mean, we sometimes as part of the training, we do an interesting thing. We ask the people, where is the stomach of a soil? Where would you say is the stomach? I mean, sorry, where is the stomach of a plant?
Listen, I have no idea. You've thrown me. The last time someone asked me a question and they were coming from the training for Foundations for Farming, it was about the soil on a road that has, on a tarmac road, right? And then a soil in a bucket, and you pour water. Where will the water go the most? And I got it wrong, so I'm not going to attempt. Please tell me where the stomach is.
So it's actually a trick question, right? When I say to you, where is the stomach of a plant, people will say, it's in the flowers, it's in the leaves, it's in the stem, it's in the roots. But then we end up coming with, you know, the conclusion to say there is no stomach on a plant. The way a plant keeps its food is in the soil. So the most important thing that you need to take care of is the soil itself,
Yeah.
not necessarily for you now to always look at the other aspects, because if the soil is fed, the plant will be fed. It will be able to resist diseases because it's well fed. It will be able to feed itself. It will be able to be sustainable. It won't need you to keep on giving it nutrition every now and again, because that also means you need to spend money.
If the stomach was anywhere on the plant, if you uprooted the plant, it would stay longer, right? But once you take it out of the soil, you've taken away its sustenance. So
Yes. You see, you know your
I feel
stuff.
very clever, right?
You know your stuff. You know your stuff. So yeah, so it's a very heart attitude type of thing. We speak a lot about mindset, but we also talk about the heart, the attitude of the heart, which is very important for us. And then the last one would be doing things with joy. Joy is meant to be part of the process. William even spoke earlier on and said, when we grow up, most of us, we think farming is so hard and then we think it's supposed to be hard labor and so forth. But if you do things according to planning and doing things on time at standard and without wastage, you will get the result. And these principles that we've mentioned are not only to do with farming, they also apply to all different walks of life. And business itself. As part of the joy, you can then also make a profit.
I'll tell you what I see on the streets online, on social media. People just saying, don't go into farming. It will break your heart. It will break your heart. And because that's what we see a lot of. So a lot of people are discouraged to get into farming because there are more losses than wins when we're following what's out there. You spoke about precision agriculture, and I'm assuming that's what you were speaking about. William, have you seen a lot of that in Uganda?
Not really. This is my third time. No, this is my fourth time in Uganda. Again, what I see is wherever you look is green, mostly bananas. But I think we can take it a step further in harnessing what God has already given us in terms of uplifting our standards. So many people say that African standards are the poorest in the world, but we are the generation who are supposed to change that in just trying to start to do things to the best standard possible. And I think that will also help us to actually feed our nation as well. So in terms of standard, I think we can. Yes, we are doing well, but I think we can take it a step further in terms of uplifting the standards. Because remember that yield is directly linked to standards. You cannot expect to have the greatest result if you are not improving your standards. So our standard must improve if you want to improve our yields.
So when you've been speaking to smallholder farmers in the north and you're saying, we need you to do measurements. We don't do a lot of measurements here. We plant, we have rich soils.
Yeah.
What are you telling them to help them understand why it is important to do these measurements?
Yeah, the same is what Mark has said, that understanding the heart behind what we do, I think will help us to improve on our yields. In terms of the standards, is we want them to harness the best that they can from what God has already given them. In terms of standards, we're saying, okay, the amount of seed that you need. So that will also. Sometimes to those who live in the city, your parents will ask you for some seed at the end of before the rain starts, and you send them some seed, maybe 50 kg, 40 kgs. But throughout the year, they also call you and say, hey, I need more food because whatever they planted, they didn't harvest enough. So what we're saying is, if you do it well, even with a 2 kg seed, which is what we use in our Pfumvudza plot, you can actually harvest enough to feed the family for the rest of the year. So, but you cannot achieve that if you're just throwing the seed around and hoping that it will germinate. You will not achieve that if you're not putting it and covering it and putting the right nutrition so that it can give you the best result that you want as well. So standards are linked to your output in a sense. That's why standards are important if we are to feed ourselves as well. So even as we go to northern Uganda, on my last trip, we're just focusing on your mulching is important because number one is suppresses your weeds. If there are no weeds, there's no competition between your plant to eat that food that is in the ground. No, you're actually keeping your moisture in the ground. So instead of just saying, hey, mulch, 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 we are actually teaching them why do you need to mulch so that they understand the heart behind the thing that they're taught to do.
When I first heard about Pfumvudza, I mean, I liked it. It sounded nice. But then I started to think there must be a lot of labor required to get that piece of land ready for the planting. And I'm sure you've heard this from a number of other
Sure.
people. What do you say to that?
I always have that question wherever I go. So, no, it's too labor intensive. I have to find mulch. I have to do this. I have to do this. And I said, okay, which is labor intensive? To plow your field?
Measurements.
Yeah, yeah. You know, what is too laborious? To plow your field or to mulch your field? I grew up in the village, and I think when I was 6 or 7, I started holding the plow, and we plowed as much as we can. But after plowing, we couldn't do anything because I was so tired. Those who plowed before, they can tell you how much time, to plow an acre, you walk more than about 50 kilometers just to plow an acre. Ask somebody to walk for 50 kilometers. They will say it's not possible. But we are doing that when we plow. But also the amount of labor that goes into that as well, it's huge. So, many families in Africa, they have about 2.5 acres that they farm. They try to farm it all. But what we're trying to do with Pfumvudza is, we say, okay, reduce your area. Okay, now we're doing it like a fraction of that, which is like a 16th of your whole land. But you can get the same result, not even more, from what you've been getting all along. I had farmers that says, no, for the Pfumvudza plot, I can weed it in one go. In one day, I can weed it. But farmers have 2.5 acres or more that they try to farm and weed all year round, but they can't get the result that they want. So with Pfumvudza, it's actually the opposite. It's not labor intensive. You're actually reducing your area, but you're doing it well to the best of your ability. And look at the benefits that you are getting. Yes, agriculture is not easy, but in terms of labor, if you calculate your labor cost in your Pfumvudza, you have actually less labor as compared to the normal farming that you've been doing. Yeah.
There's a lot of prestige in having a large piece of land that
Yeah.
has bits and pieces of things,
Yes.
whether they look good or not. But you have a large piece of land and
Yeah.
you're doing things there. I think it takes a lot of work to change the mindsets to say, on your 6x6, your 10x10, your
Yeah.
16x39,
Yeah.
you can produce more than. You've been to the north and you've engaged with the smallholder farmers. Why is Pfumvudza the thing for them?
I think most of them, they have small lands that they try to farm. Number one is, I think one story that I liked the last time we were there is there's this lady who said, our young kids, they go out and steal because there's no food in the family. But now with Pfumvudza, now there's household food security. Now they cannot go and steal. So Pfumvudza is not only solving the stomach problem, but it's also solving a lot of issues that comes along with poverty as well. So for me, is how to bring, number one is dignity to our society. God has created us for a purpose. And that's what I always try to fight for. Is how can we use what God has given us in a way that, number one, is restore dignity, number one, but also restore families as well. Just going through my last trip I could see a lot of joy and restoration where farmers said, hey, with this small piece of land, I wish I had done the rest of my land this way, because now even that was before harvesting, but they could actually see, hope does not come when you harvest. Hope comes on your process to your harvest. So just seeing that in people's hearts, I think this is why we need to restore that in people, but also in the refugee camps. There's a lot of people that are just waiting to just get food. But imagine if you teach them the nobility of just providing your family with what you can grow. I think that would be a game changer for northern Uganda.
Wow. So in Uganda we have, and I think in many other places, we have a lot of erratic rainfall, right? And how do you engage the smallholder farmers with Pfumvudza to prepare for that kind of period?
So your mulching is important because remember, mulching helps you to conserve your water in the soil. I remember in Zimbabwe, we also have the same, like in our raining season, when at one point we had about 40 days of no rain, and it gets hot. But those farmers who put mulch actually managed to harvest even during that harsh, dry spell. And I think this was a turning point for Zimbabwe. So I know it was a bad story, but it was a turning point for Zimbabwe where the government started going around the country to look at the crop assessment, and they realized that those who only have food are those who have applied the Pfumvudza principle. And they started asking, where did you get this information? They were just pointing them to foundation farming. Foundation farming, that's why the government says, hey, we want this as a national policy. So in terms of climate proofing, I think mulching will actually help you to actually make sure that you conserve the water in the soil, and thereby actually transfer to the plant in a better way as well. And like your plants are not stressed because they are under mulch. We all know what mulch does in terms of like keeping that moisture from escaping from the soil. So yeah, mulching will be the key if you want to solve the problem of erratic rains as well. And planting on time helps. Sometimes, we have shorter seasons. So if you plant on time, you are giving your plants more chance to benefit from the season that you have, no matter how short or long it is. Yeah.
So this podcast is supported by the Climate Smart Jobs Project, which is trying to get smallholder farmers in the north to take up Pfumvudza. So when they ask what makes it a viable model economically, what would you give as your response?
Well, the main thing for me is all about the harvest that you can get out of it, out of a very small scale. We've been trying so many years to try and actually harvest something out of a very large fields, most of us. Here you speak about acres. In South Africa, we speak about hectares. But with Pfumvudza or Foundations for Farming specifically, we speak about meters, which is a very small plots where you can actually produce so much more, out of a very small plot. So it's all about also changing the mindset that, the answer is not really to go big. The answer is to actually be faithful with the little you have and get the best out of that. And then you can start to multiply, in terms of that little that you already have, which is so much better. As we've already been saying with Pfumvudza, on a very small plot, which is we need to work out the numbers, but in terms of hectares, we say a 16th of a hectare, which is 16 meters by 39 meter plot, you can feed your family for a year. In terms of the way that the model is structured, you can be able to feed your family for a year on just a 16 meter by 39 meter plot. So is that possible on a larger scale? Yes, but then do it at a small standard. At a small scale, at a high standard, and then grow from that. That is highly profitable.
It makes so much sense when you say it. It makes so much sense when I see it in practice. But to just go back to your own, you said 2.5 acres that most of African families have, to just go back and say, I have all this land and now I'm just going to use this bit of land, is very hard for the mind to take in.
Yeah. I think also, if you talk to any small-scale farmer in Africa, number one problem that he has is, how do I feed my family for this year? And I think this is one way Pfumvudza is coming in to meet household food security first. And just plant this small piece of land and feed your family. Then he can start to dream. A farmer will not dream until he knows that his family's needs are met. Yeah. So number one is want to meet their family needs and say, hey, just do this small piece of land, feed your family. Then that will also give him the mind to dream bigger. Okay, now I can feed my family from 16th of a hectare. What else can I do? Okay, let me put fruit trees, let me put animals, let me put this. Now you're actually helping him to think commercially, even though he's still a small-scale farmer. But now he can think about, okay, what else can I do? because my family needs are met and I can do other things.
So does Pfumvudza only work for maize, or can I use it for my dog? Can I use it for my fruit trees? Does it work for everything?
You can use Pfumvudza for different things, different crops. We've done it for maize, we've done it for beans, we've done it for rice. In Madagascar, because their staple diet is rice, they use a lot of rice. They're doing it for rice. So you can do it for different crops. We haven't done it for fruit trees, but again, in the same system, fruit trees can be incorporated to bring household food security as well. So that normally you go to a farmer, he has maize, but whatever he needs, beans you go to buy in the market. But why don't you make your farm produce everything that you need in terms of fruits, in terms of nutrition, so that you don't have to go and rely on other people, but you can actually produce what you have from the land that you have as well. So that's what we try to do as well with Pfumvudza, the way we introduce different elements in a way that actually help a farmer to be self-sustainable. Up to things like agroforestry, because so many families in Africa, they cook using firewood. So instead of chopping the forest, why don't you incorporate trees in your normal farming land that you can chop down and harvest? Now you save the forest. Now we are not deforesting our forest. So Pfumvudza can actually address so many needs that we see in Africa today.
So I've heard you say Madagascar. You're from Zimbabwe, you're from South Africa. I know there's foundations for farming in Rwanda.
Yes.
Where else is Pfumvudza active? I mean, even now in Uganda, where else?
So Pfumvudza has been checking with different countries. Zambia is doing it. South Africa is doing it. Malawi, Madagascar, Burundi is doing it as well. I think about more than 15 countries have actually adopted Pfumvudza as individuals. But Rwanda is doing it at a national level. Zimbabwe is doing it at a national level. Madagascar is doing it at a national level. And also Zambia is thinking of doing it at a national level as well because of the results that they've seen in those countries. Yeah.
What have farmers told you have been the biggest challenges they faced while doing Pfumvudza?
Mulching is the biggest challenge, especially in the drier regions, where you don't have a lot of plant vegetation that grows during your raining season, because you have a shorter season. And this is what we have seen as well, especially in Zimbabwe. That's why in Zimbabwe now we are going to like what we call Pfumvudza 4, where you are actually introducing the fourth plot to be like just for your mulch requirements. So you actually grow, we are using a crop called sunham, which is a leguminous crop, which is woody. It takes longer to decompose, so farmers are growing it as a separate plot that will give them the mulch that they need for their 3 plots that they grow per year as well. But at the same time, that it's a leguminous tree, so it's actually building the soil as you grow the mulch as well. So it's a win-win to a farmer. Like what Mark has said is, we need to look after the soil if you want the soil to produce food for us, and that's the approach that we have used.
So I'm also hearing the same thing with farmers here saying, yes, we know that mulch works, but where do I get mulch? What would you tell them?
Just look at your surrounding environment. Look at your vegetation. Again, in Uganda, you have a lot of like bananas. All those banana leaves, what are you doing with them after harvesting your bananas? And you know that banana leaves are rich.
Using them to cook.
Yeah. But there's so much residue that is left, that you can use as well. But also remember that bananas are rich in potassium as well. So you're actually addressing the potassium need that your soil need as well. So once you start to look, you always find a lot of opportunity to get mulch. I remember a farmer used to go and slash another farmer's field so they can get mulch. But for this farmer, it was, no, I don't need it, just take it as much. But after seeing his huge increase over years, says, no, I want my grass, you cannot take it anymore.
Yeah.
But again, once you start to have your regenerative mind or glasses on, I promise you see a lot of opportunities where you can just say, hey, this is mulch, I can use this. Okay, you're walking down the road, you see like Someone is put a pile of grass that you want to burn, say, hey, please, can I have this? And next time they won't give you because they know what you're going to do with it. But again, once you start to look, you see a lot of opportunity where you can get mulch.
Yeah, it's amazing. Your mindset, once you're aware of the benefits, you start to become this crazy guy, especially with the manure, that the animals produce. You start to tell everybody that, please, when your animals produce manure, give it to me. And even with the grass for mulch and the leaves for mulch, you start to notice everywhere you go. You start to, for example, in South Africa specifically, you'll find that maybe the municipality or the government is cutting grass on the road. When you see it on the road, you'll actually be tempted to stop and load it onto your van. Your mindset just transforms, and you start to realize it is actually there. You start to have a mindset of abundance instead of a mindset of lack.
Mark, we're closing. What would you like anyone listening to this podcast to take home from this conversation? And it could be a farmer, it could be just somebody who is not really interested in farming and they just like to listen to climate conversations, development actor, somebody from government, private sector, anybody. What would you like them to take from everything that we've spoken about?
All right. So I think for me, the most important thing would be the heart change, which the heart change then goes to the mind change, which also goes on to the doing part. May we actually adopt an attitude of realizing that if we look at our surroundings and we start to adopt an attitude of realizing that God has given us everything we need, and realizing that we just need to be more faithful with it, then we'll start to see the abundance and we'll start to see the profit, we'll start to see the progress in our lives. But what do we normally find? We find that people tend to just complain about what they don't have. If we may start looking around and actually, saying, I'll be more faithful with the little that God has given me, definitely we'll see a difference in our communities, we'll see a difference in our families, we'll see a difference in Africa at large, and we'll see a difference in the world as well.
Do you have a favorite farmer story from Pfumvudza since 2018 when you started to do this?
There are so many different ones. With specifically farming, we have found, I'll generalize it and not even speak about a specific one. The favorite thing that we find with this type of farming training is that families, which are the heart of a community, start to transform. We'll find that families, even if people are unemployed, they start to have something that they can do together. We find that families start to unite. We find that families start to prosper because they are praying together, they're working together and eating together in something that they all contributed in. So the heart of it all is transforming our communities by starting to develop families at large and not just individuals.
Thank you, Mark. William, we're closing. What would you like us to take home?
I think one thing that I always say about Africa, because I'm one proud African, is I don't think Africa is running out of resources. I think Africa is running out of faithful stewards of those resources. And if we steward those resources well, I promise you Africa can feed the world. That's my closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you.